Well, hello and welcome back to my wood shop here in the big woods of northwest Missouri. Thank you for coming along today. We're going to be looking at part 5 of our bunk bed build, and today we're going to be focusing on the assembly of the headboard and the footboard. So thanks again for coming along, and we'll get started. A bit of an overview of what we have here. You see the headboard with the pegs in it. You see the finished headboard and footboard with the railing. Then you see the connecting. So let's look at the details of how we got this done. You'll notice here I've got everything laid out. I've got all my top rail and bottom rail, all my spindles. I've got my side stiles. Everything's laid out, numbered. Notice I've got my glue and my little brush. I've got my rag here. I can wipe everything up. I've got some paper towels to clean up. So basically, the idea is that you get all this out and ready to go before you start. Your glue has a certain setup time, and even though I'm using Pipe Bond 3 on it, it still has a setup time that you need to be concerned about. You'll notice here what I'm doing is I'm squeezing a little bit of glue in those mortises. Okay. Sometimes I'll take like a little brush and I'll brush those in, but these are only like 1/4 inch wide. So I don't want to create too much of a mess to clean up. I just want to get a little bit of glue on each of the sides. See, I'm going back and forth on it. And that'll just ensure I've got plenty of glue in that when that mortise and tenon go together. Then you'll notice what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a little brush. This is just a little cheap artist brush. It's not, just like a craft brush you can pick up at a local store, Hobby Lobby, or wherever you get your stuff at. Works pretty good. And I'm just making sure that I've got each one of the little tenons coated on every side. That's important. You want to get a good glue covering. I have a good fit on this, but I still want to make sure I've got glue all the way around. There we go. I'll stick that here just in a moment. After I get it good and coated, I'll do each one of these sides. See here how that's going on pretty good. I'll set that down. Now notice how I set this in. I want to make sure I'm checking my number carefully. Then I want to make sure that goes in really good. I'm going to seat it. Then I'm going to take a mallet and just give it a pound. Good. Now we'll go to the rest of them. You can see now I've got all my little slats here anchored into my top rail. Got them in there good. I've tapped them down tight. I'm going back and I'm putting a little bit of glue now on each of the tenons, and I'm going to fit those into the bottom, the mortises on that bottom rail that I have there. Notice how I started a little bit of an angle on one side. I'm sort of fitting those together slowly. You have to be careful with this. It's like putting together a puzzle. You want to make sure you get all your pieces seated right. When you do, you get them all fitted just right, then you can squeeze this together. One thing about fitting these little railing slats here into the top and bottom rail is I had to be sure to get everything lined up. They're a nice snug fit, so when you get that glue on there and it starts expanding those fibers, you don't have a whole lot of time to mess with this. So you gotta get this done. I found really that it was a little bit easier as I worked on some of the other headboards and footboards. I actually put them in the bottom rail first, so I had a little bit more leverage. A little bit more pressure I could put on that when I hammered those in. Notice I'm taking just a little stick. I'm going to whack that just a few times so that I can get that in. There we go. It took a little bit. I had to put a little force on those to get those in when that started drying a bit, started swelling those wood fibers. But it all went together real good. You can see how I was putting a little bit of pressure on that. It's going together good. One of the main things that you do, once you get those set, you need to, of course, check for squareness. You'll see me do that here in just a little bit. You want to make sure that's right. And then you want to be sure to get your clamps on. leave yourself time. Have your clamps all set out. You can notice as you're looking at the screen there, as you're watching it, to my right, your left, I've got my clamps all set out, and I'm getting them all set up and ready to go. And these are nice little bar clamps. Worked good for this. And you don't really, clamping is a whole different story, but clamping is something you don't have to put a tremendous amount of pressure on generally. You just get them good and snug. I know there's people that really like to crank those clamps down, but I like to be careful when I put my clamps on. I want just enough pressure to close up the gap, and not overly so, not excessively, just not needed. If you're not careful, you can damage your wood. You can just over clamp and clamp too much out. So there's some things to be cautious about whenever you're doing your clamping. Notice though, I did put some little shim pieces in here. That's little hardwood pieces that I've put in. That's just to spread out the weight so I don't dent that soft pine. It's easy to do that. Get all my clamps fitted again. You can't see, but I have checked for squareness already on this. And I continue to go back and check and make sure that we're good. I'm tightening down, trying to tighten down evenly, not get one too tight. See, I'm just trying to do them evenly, get them spread out good. There we go. And notice too that I'm getting it seated straight down on that clamp. See, I'm putting a little pressure down on it. That just helps it to get the seat good, so I'm not putting a warp or a bow in my headboard. There we go. I'm going to put one across the top. This was a little clamp that I made, actually, some homemade clamps. And I've used these a lot over the years. I made out of some scrap walnut that I had. And I made these. It's out of small thread. And they've worked good over the years. Alright. It's doing the little last minute details, getting everything shimmed up. And we'll be ready to go to the next stage here in a moment. As soon as this dries up, I'll take it loose. And we'll be able to move on to the next step. There we go. Once I got my slats in there, got that all secured, then the second thing was to go ahead and to get the railings tied into my side posts there, my stile posts as I call them. And notice here I'm getting glue. I'm making sure I'm getting that brushed in so all surfaces are glue coated. Got that done on those tenons. And you'll notice I'm going to squeeze a little bit of glue in the mortises as well. I want to get every side coated. Most of these mortises here, I got a really good fit on them. There were some that were a little looser than I like. Some maybe just a fudge tighter. But overall, it was a good fit. See, I'm getting all the glue spread around here. I'm going to put those around there. Make sure I've got all my sides matched up right. That turned over. That's going to be ready to go. And notice how that one went in pretty easy on that one. That wasn't too bad. Wanted to make sure that I got the top and bottom lined up the best I could so I didn't have to fight that later on. I checked my sides again to make sure that I had it all lined up and ready to go. Looks good. Went ahead and took that clamp off on the middle. Stuck my larger clamps in there. Again, notice the little shims I put in there to keep that clamp from clamping into my sides. And I did try to work pretty fast. Now, of course, sped this whole thing up, so you didn't have to watch glue drying, so to speak. But you can see the process, and when you're working by yourself, or mostly by yourself, it takes a little time to get it all lined out and going. You got to get everything right. I dropped a few shims and had to go back and redo them a couple of times. Now the cleanup. That's where that rag comes in handy. You know, there's been an argument over the years, or some discussion over the years, I should put that way, if you should just let the glue dry and then take a putty knife or a chisel and chip it off. The idea was you don't seal the wood grain around it. But I think it works best for me if I go ahead and I wipe as much glue off as possible when I put those on. Just seems to work a little bit better for me when I do it. I'm taking those clamps off for the bottom and top rail. So leaving my side clamps on, waiting for that to dry. Notice here I'm checking again my diagonals, making sure that I'm square. And these turned out pretty good. You know, they turned out within a 1/16 of an inch. Some of them were just dead on, actually. But if I can get a 1/16 of an inch in diagonals, I'm doing pretty good, or pretty close to it. Alright, so you can sort of see step by step how we've done this and what we're doing. It's worked out pretty good. As soon as this dries up, then we'll go to the next step in the procedure. The next step in the procedure was to start drilling out my holes for my peg tenons. I think I mentioned to you in one of the videos here that I wanted to be sure to put some peg tenons in this little design that I have. I was challenged to see if I could make a bed with no metal parts in it, just all wooden joints. Part of that was to put in the peg tenons. Peg tenon is very strong, so it's a tenon that goes into your, it's actually just a little peg that goes through the mortise into the tenon all the way through. You can see I drill it down, and then I'm fitting each piece very, very carefully. I put glue inside the hole, inside the little hole that I drilled, and then I very carefully put glue all around the outside as well of the peg. And some of these I had to actually drive in. I had to tap them in a little bit. Not overly hard, just had to give it a little tap. And then I let a little bit of the peg stick out on both sides so I can come back later with a good sharp chisel and just pare those off. Also, what you don't see here is that I took the pegs and I made sure the grain on that peg was running at 90 degrees to the grain on the stile post. This was a fun procedure actually. I made a little jig, in fact the same jig that I use for the through tenons, the keyed tenons. I used this also, used that same one and just drilled it out so it would fit, so I didn't have to measure each one. And it worked out pretty slick actually. Major thing I want you to see here is my setup, of course. You see I've got all my glue, everything's ready to go, ready to rock and roll there. I'm just driving those in ever so carefully, making sure that I got plenty sticking out. It's nice and clean. And major thing is to scrub most of that glue off when you get a chance. There you go. I'm just working that off. I did go back and pare a couple of them off just to see what it looked like, and it's really looks nice. I think once I get some stain on there, it's going to really pop. So we'll see here just a little bit. And you can see here, got that done. It's looking pretty good. Made for a good finish. Alright. Got one in top, two in the bottom. Each side, again, I've got that little jig work like a charm. Okay, I got all the headboards and footboards done. I had 6 of them, and got all those completed. As you see, they went together pretty well. I've got some finish work to do on it. I've got to pare off those pegs, and I've got to take a little bit off of some of the ends there. But overall, it turned out pretty good. Everything turned out pretty good. Didn't have a lot of extra glue, nothing like that to mess with. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out overall so far. You can see here, I'm showing you in the picture here, I've got actually the 2 railings in the side, and that's what we're going to be doing the next video, so be sure to tune in for that one. That's going to be number 6. That'll be part 6 when we go to it. Thanks again for coming along with me. If you like what you're seeing here, give me a thumbs up, ring the bell, and subscribe. Appreciate you being along with us. It's a fun project. I'm trying to help you walk through it step by step if you're choosing to build it. So till we meet again, happy chips.